My name is Amanda Donald. The name of my presentation is The Effect of Goal Setting on Reading Fluency in the Middle Grades. I am a middle school reading teacher. I have focused over the last 4 years, I've been teaching on reading proficiency in the middle grades. We have implemented a literacy intervention in which I have been attempting to find an intervention that would be most suitable for the middle grades, as well as would be the most impactful on reading proficiency. In the school district in which I work, the goal in the 2015-16 school year for the district was that 100% of the student population in 712 would show at least 1 year's growth in reading. Over that year, only about 52% of the students did show a 1 year's growth in reading. Therefore, the problem is that students are scoring below proficiency on reading assessments, and those students that fall behind definitely have a hard time catching up to their peers. Therefore, it's imperative that I look towards finding something that would be the most impactful for students in the middle grades to improve their reading fluency. My first step and the next piece in this presentation was to review the literature on research studies in regards to reading fluency in the middle grades. The importance of this study was that I needed to find something within a reading intervention that was an intense enough program that would help these students that are performing below proficiency levels, and that I understand now that students that are deficient in reading must be a part of a research-based intervention and not just something that I've chosen. I needed to find something that was research-based. So the next portion of my presentation and my next step in the research process was to begin reviewing literature of pieces from previous studies. The problem is that students are scoring below proficiency in reading assessments. Students who fall behind have a hard time catching up to their peers, especially at the secondary level when words become tougher to decode. So the history of the problem at this point was that in the National Assessments for Educational Progress, or the NAEP, the 8th grade students in 2011 was only, the average of 8th grade reading scores was only 1 point higher. Reading fluency is a critical skill for students to be able to grasp meaning from text. So fluency, simply stated, is that it is the ability to read with speed, accuracy, and proper expression. If students struggle with reading fluency, they have a hard time comprehending because they're spending so much time trying to decode a word that they aren't grasping what they are getting from their reading. The first study that I looked at was an intervention of 3rd and 5th grade students. It dealt with phoneme sequencing. And what I found through these results and what I read and what the researchers found was that although their phoneme sequencing and their decoding skills improved slightly, their reading fluency did not show a significant change. Therefore, you could gather that phoneme sequencing at the middle school level may not be the most appropriate either. In a similar study that I read about, the participant was an 8-year-old female student that had already been through many different types of reading interventions, but was still struggling with reading. These researchers used modeling with practice, in which the participant continuously practiced a certain type of passage and was shown modeling with that. The results did show that there was a slight increase in reading fluency. However, once again, this study was done with an 8-year-old participant, which is elementary aged, and I was looking for something more in the middle grades. The next study that I looked at dealt with video self-modeling and video peer modeling. The participants were 6 students from grade 3 to 5. This study dealt in the special education classroom instead of the general education classroom, and the results did show that there was some improvement in reading fluency. However, the researchers were unsure if it was because students gained in self-efficacy instead of in fluency and if the intervention of video self-modeling or peer modeling was the cause or was the reason for the improvements. And the next study I looked at dealt with goal setting. Because that's what I was looking for in an intervention. Was I thought maybe goal setting would be a way for students to be able to track their progress. This study was done in 2010 and was done for college students who had been struggling academically. The researchers used an online goal setting tool in which students in the treatment group could look at setting an academic as well as a personal goal. The results showed that those students that were in the treatment group and did set an online goal with using that intervention tool, that those that did set it did show an improvement in their academics. And even if they hadn't set an academic goal and had set a personal goal, that it did show improvement in their academics. And once again, this isn't at the middle school level, but it did deal with goal setting, which is what I was looking at. SMART goals was actually the direction that I thought I would head, is the implementation of a goal setting intervention. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely goals. And I looked at a study from 2012 in which the researchers looked at participants that were in a high school management class. They were working in a small group, and it was a digital type of project. And the researchers gave the treatment group a SMART goals worksheet in which to set a goal prior to the implementation of this assignment. And the results showed that those students that set that SMART goal prior to their assignment did receive a better grade for this. What I was looking for was something in the middle grades, and through the research that I did in the literature I reviewed, I found that there was a gap in the research. There really wasn't anything that had been geared as an intervention tool to improve reading fluency in the middle grades. Therefore, my research question became, would reading fluency be positively impacted with the implementation of some type of a goal-setting intervention? My purpose statement was to determine if the implementation of goal-setting intervention in the middle school classroom would have a positive impact on reading fluency. The impact of this study would be that there would be an increase in fluency, that goal setting might influence fluency and therefore improve their comprehension and their reading proficiency. If we set goals early in the school year, would that positively influence fluency and comprehension? And I would be able to monitor their progress through the implementation of a progress monitoring tool. My methodology for this was that the research design was a quasi-experimental design, and it was that way because the classes were predetermined prior to the school year by the principal, because the principal sets the classes. And although they were not set randomly, they were, once I started, I had participants that were 53 7th grade students. I did have 2 separate 7th grade general education classrooms, and the study was done in my reading classroom. And although I did not, I wasn't able to randomly select students, demographically, the 2 classes were similar in the percentage of females to males. They were 56% male students or participants and 44% female participants. The materials that I used were first the basic reading inventory. I used that for my progress monitoring tool. I had SMART goals worksheets that we implemented prior for the treatment group or within the study to the treatment group. I used my issued laptop from my school, an HP Pavilion, and I used Microsoft Excel to record my data. I also implemented the use of paraprofessionals. So my procedure, it lasted 8 weeks. It was within my classroom. We had a control and a treatment group. The treatment group was issued the SMART Goals worksheets, and I implemented that curriculum. We continued with the general reading curriculum as well as the intervention curriculum, and the treatment group, once again, was implemented the SMART Goals. BRI progress monitoring was done biweekly on Fridays during my intervention period. Students conferenced with me as well about how to improve their fluency and words correct per minute. The treatment group was my independent variable, and the dependent variable was words correct per minute. My reliability, because I had no control over the assignment of participants, that might have skewed my data somewhat. However, as I looked at the baseline data and the ending data or the baseline data for the control and the treatment groups, they were very similar in intellect. Baseline scores were very similar. I also had 6 BRI progress monitoring checks and made many observations through this. So the reliability of the BRI assessment was very good. I was certified to use it, and I did teach a couple of paraprofessionals to help me implement BRIs because with 53 students, it would have taken a lot longer. And I was the only one that scored those assessments. For my data analysis, I used a BRI progress monitoring tool biweekly. And the statistical method for use was the independent samples t-test. This compared the average of 2 independent groups to conclude whether there was evidence that the related population means showed a significant change. The results of my study. My hypothesis was that with the implementation of a SMART goal intervention, middle school students would show improvement in reading fluency. The evidence from these findings is not strong enough to support the hypothesis because there was not a significant change. Pre-treatment words correct per minute for the control group was 108 5/10, and the mean post-treatment for the control group was 125 8/10. The mean words correct per minute pre-treatment was 112 7/10, and the mean post-treatment was 137 6/10. This figure does show that there was a slightly larger increase from the treatment group than there was from the control group. However, I was unsure whether this was because I continued with the reading curriculum or if the treatment group showed that slightly larger increase because of the implementation of the SMART goals intervention. So my implications, limitations, and recommendations. The implementations showed that fluency instruction needs to be explicitly taught to these students that are deficient in reading fluency, and that students' reading fluency must be assessed on a regular basis. I found this through my progress monitoring tool that with the BRI testing, that I could see whether they were increasing or decreasing over those 2 weeks' time. My limitations would be on the research design. Because I was not able to randomly select my participants, that might have skewed my results. The length of the study could have been longer. This one was only 8 weeks. The type of goal-setting intervention, I used a SMART goals intervention, and there might be a different one that would have showed more significant change. The paraprofessionals, I didn't have a lot of time to train them. That might have been a limitation. And my workspace, there were interruptions and it was smaller, and that might have been a limitation as well. So my recommendations would be that an experimental research design might be used because random selection would have improved the internal validity. The study time could be increased. 8 weeks showed a slight increase for the treatment group in words correct per minute, and had that been a little longer, there may have been a significant improvement in reading fluency for the treatment group. A different goal-setting intervention for future studies. Future studies could focus on a different type of goal-setting intervention that might improve reading fluency. Time preparing and training the individuals on the progress monitoring tool for future studies, that may also improve the validity of the results. And students' reading fluency for future studies must be assessed on a regular basis to show that significant change. In conclusion, although there was not a significant change showed by the statistical testing and the independent samples t-test, there was a slight increase shown by the use of a goal-setting intervention in the middle grades. Here are my references, and thank you.